Yeah, they already read the stupid disclaimer. Okay, so before we continue this list, there's a particular issue here. Alright, so you notice how all the ratings have been random decibels and nothing's been rounded up? That was to prevent any ties, and for the most part it worked. However, one show came out in the fall season and I had to wait until it was done before figuring out where it would be placed. And unfortunately, it did tie with another show. Right down to the exact decimal. This number right here, exactly. I was already nearly done with part 1 when this happened, and I didn't have time to redo the list, so here's the thing. I will still show the next 2 anime as number 5 and number 4 spots, but technically these next 2 anime are in fact tied at number 4. And the other anime before, just shift their spots up and put Wasteful Days at number 10. Okay? Well, that makes sense? Good. Now, roll that beautiful anime footage. Beastars. Okay, look, I get it. Beastars hasn't legally come out for American audiences yet, and yes, it means that I watched the show illegally. I know, I'm bad. So by all means, technically most people won't put this on the list for 2019, but folks, this came out in Japan in 2019. I'm counting it. And yes, this is the show from the fall season that threw my listing out of whack. I had started these videos thinking everything that was going to make the list had already come out, but over time the average per episode rating sent the show into the top 5. And in complete honesty, this was the last show I wrote for and edited for this list. But this isn't because of the late entry or being one of the last shows watched this year. It's because I was afraid to write this review. You see, Beastars all in all is a drama series. But when it comes to the genre, the closest I've seen to drama is Clannad or Fruits Basket. Those shows are lightweights when it comes to drama. Beastars felt like it was a heavyweight with its dark topics, thick atmosphere, and complex metaphors. So complex that I'm not sure what the overall metaphor is. I mean, a lot of people like to make the joke, hey, it's Zootopia, the anime. But with Zootopia, it was a clear metaphor on racism, while Beastars, well, it might be about that, or it might be about class warfare, or maybe gender expectations, or something else? And I have to ask you to forgive me, but as you can already tell with how the editing is right now, I'm not going to dive any further into this. Not because there's nothing worth diving into, but it's such a deep pool that I'm afraid that I'll drown in it. And with how long I've taken to finish this video, I really need to get this over with fast. This is just another example of how waiting to the last minute to start working on this top 10 list is a bad idea. And I promise this is the last time I'm doing this. So just take my word that Beastars is well worth watching, and when it finally comes out on American Netflix in March, be ready to sink your teeth in. Hitori Bochi no Maru Marose Katsu. So, whoever remembers Watamote? You know, the 2013 anime about a loner girl trying to make her high school debut and become popular, but failing due to her extreme case of social anxiety? It was a show that, despite its ironic title, had some popularity and was widely enjoyed by many, including me. However, if you look at some reviews, others could not get past the cringy, angsty, and emo vibe coming off the main character, Tomoko. If you've ever wondered what Watamote would have been like if it didn't follow a bitter and selfish main protagonist, Hitori Bochi answers that question. The show follows Bochi Hitori, a clumsy shy girl entering middle school full of students she has never met before. She has the goal to try and talk with each student from her class and befriend all of them. Not just some, but all of them. Why such a goal? Well, Bochi, despite being shy, did have a friend as a kid. However, shortly before entering middle school, Bochi's friend dropped one heck of a proposition for her.
ボッチーが中学卒業までにクラス全員と友達になるまで絶交することに決めました。
So now Bochi must go out of her comfort zone and reach out to her fellow classmates if she ever wants to talk with her best friend again. Bochi's way of trying to handle this pressure is some of the purest and funniest things I have seen in a while.
約束はクラス全員と友達になること。クラスの大きさは関係ない。つまりクラスメイトがゼロならばクラス全員と友達になったと言える。みんなには引っ越してもらう。そうなれば一人ぼっちです。ここにいる全員と友達になりました。完璧。
This right here for me was top comedy of the year hands down. Every episode gave me either a good lighthearted chuckle or left me in the hospital due to the extreme pain in my sides. Despite her overwhelming self-doubt, Bochi does make a friend by the end of episode 1 with Nako Sunao. After some really awkward encounters, they finally share phone contacts and start texting, which is surprisingly easy on Bocchi, though a bit silly. I mean, the girl is right in front of her. Why doesn't she just talk with her voice instead of texting? Good lord, I'm just now realizing this is me in a nutshell. The second student that Bocchi starts to befriend is Aru Honsu, the class vice president. As usual in these shows, she falls into a character trope, this one being the unfortunate girl. One who constantly has some sort of funny mishap or makes some embarrassing mistake. As cliche as that is, she still is entertaining and enjoyable to watch. Then there's Rikita Sotoka, yet another foreign student with blonde hair and blue eyes. I swear, anime writers, do you think everyone outside of Japan looks like this? Rikita first approaches Bocchi with an excited aura, asking her a really off-the-wall accusation.
普段は存在感を消し、時には素早く動く。外かの目はごまかせないです。そう、あなたは。あなたは？忍者です。
Yeah, it's typical with most depictions of foreigners in anime shows, Rikita comes to Japan because she's a fangirl. But not for anime or J-pop, but because of ninjas. She wanted to find one and thought Bocchi was one, but after Bocchi tells her that she's not a ninja, Rikita's happy persona shifts into a saddened state. As silly as this all is, Bocchi is concerned about this.
そうなの。すっかり輝きも減っちゃってるみたいで。なんか元気もないし。私のせいだ。
Let's put a pin in that for now. Get it? By the way, there's a small plot involving the teacher. She, for whatever reason, is extremely afraid of Nako. Like, I don't get this at all. She tries to avoid any possible confrontation with her as if she is some sort of rebellious biker gang leader or something. Cause yeah, this face totally is a stone cold killer. I also find this hilariously odd after learning that Nako's last name, Sonal, actually means a calm and not rebellious nature. Now one last thing to bring up is probably something many would take issue with. This whole thing starting with somebody unfriending someone to get them to do something. It truly is all good for Bocchi to push her out of her comfort zone and reach out to other people, but some might find this really cruel. Well, in one episode, while out with friends Bocchi has been able to make, she sees that childhood friend pass by and calls out to her. The scene is possibly one of the most heartbreaking scenes ever and actually shows us that this decision is also a burden on her friend as well.
友達できてた。私のこと嫌いになってなかった。ポッチー、カイちゃん、カイちゃん。
Now don't get me wrong with what I'm about to say in comparing it to Watamote. I still love Watamote where it's no holds barred on the emo mindset and overwhelming awkward situations the main character goes through, but the one thing I can point out that makes Bocchi far different from Tomoko is how each of them deals with their troubles. Tomoko would always look at her troubles as everyone else's fault, which is pretty much how it's summed up in the title. But Bocchi is completely opposite. She puts all the pressure on herself. She feels every little problem is because of her shyness and inactions. She has so much self-doubt that when she got sick and missed classes, she actually feared that all her friends would forget who she was, to the point that this hilarious scene happens.
Nako-chan! Haru-chan! Oh, konnichiwa! Hitori Bocchi desu! But
what makes Bocchi a better character is the fact that she looks at every situation as something she caused and has to make right. The reason she is even able to make friends despite all her fears is the fact that she actively tries to make up to people even though she hasn't really done anything wrong. For example, the situation with Rikita. Rikita approached Bocchi over a misunderstanding of who she was and got sad when her expectation wasn't met. Bocchi has no reason to be concerned with this silly idea in Rikita's head, but yet Bocchi saw that she was sad and wanted to do something for her despite having no obligation to do so. Everyone can see that kind, caring personality in Bocchi and it's admirable, which is why Bocchi is able to make friends despite her incapabilities to handle social interactions. Hitori Bocchi no Maru Maru Tekatsu is available on Crunchyroll. Consider this your acceptance letter into the School of Laughs. Oh maidens, in your savage season. In life we go through many burdens, hardships, trials, and tribulations in the process. And one of the most confusing, scary, and exciting moments in that is no doubt adolescence. Sometimes we go through it with ease, for others it takes a little time, and some try to grow up too fast. Okay, fair warning folks, there's a lot to unpack with Oh Maidens, so bear with me because this is going to take a while. Oh Maidens is about the story of high school girls in the literature club. No, not that one. This isn't a horror anime. Our story follows Momoko, Hitoa, Rika, Kazusa, and their newest lit club member, Nina. A group of misfits and outcasts who read and discuss literature. One day they discuss their favorite author's latest story idea that involves creating a bucket list. In discussing what they would want on their bucket list, Nina suddenly interjects with,
Sex.
Little did she know that this small declaration would be the heavy stone to send a ripple through the rest of the girls' minds. Sorry, I'm trying to follow the literature club theme. Too much? The girls start their own individual stories of self-discovery, with each being unique and some of the most compelling I've seen in a while. Kazusa's story is about her relationship with her next-door neighbor Izumi. Izumi is becoming popular with other girls who look down on Kazusa out of jealousy, causing both Kazusa and Izumi distress on how to interact with each other. But after accidentally walking in on Izumi and his, Kazusa starts to wonder about her true feelings for Izumi, which sounds a bit contrived at first until you realize that Kazusa is stuck in an innocent mindset trying to avoid growing up and discovering Izumi is no longer as innocent as her. She feels he's going to leave her behind due to her fears preventing her from catching up to him. And then there's Rika's story. Oh my god, Rika's story! This right here hit me harder than anything else. Rika, being the most reserved and apprehensive to discussions of sex being brought up, calls out students openly talking about it in class. But the students clap back, calling Rika jealous because their unattractive appearance is why she will never have sex.
そっか曽根崎さんってそんなブスか割と可愛い気がするんだけど背高いしスラッとしてるしなんつうかモデル系じゃね
Look at that. Look at that face! A simple and kind gesture was the start of a big change for Rika. For all her life, she'd constantly heard the other students call her ugly for so long that she believed it. But hearing this boy say this to her was a first, and he does it another time as well.
やった当たり曽根崎さんやっぱ可愛いわ
And just look at how this is affecting her. She is flattered but scared as well. And this actually gets Rika to try out a new look, which the other students notice. Later, the boy confesses to her, and being a closed-off, confused girl that she is, Rika demands that he writes a report on why he likes her. To his credit, he actually does. It starts off saying how he knows she doesn't like being called cute. And what does the rest of the report say?
あ、ここ若いになってるじゃないの全く。ここは可愛いりになってるし。
可愛くね生意気なんだよ
ムカつく。
で私に投げかけられてきた傷つけられる言葉たちが可愛いの雨にゆっくりと流されていくかのような。
This scene moved me so much. The concept that many people telling you negative things on a daily basis can be beaten by one single voice constantly telling you that those things aren't true. Repeating that line over and over until you realize you are worth something. You are not what everyone else tells you, that you are worthy of love. Oh god, I can't take it! This relationship is possibly one of my all-time favorite ones in all anime I've ever seen. If for no other reason, you need to watch Otome-domo just to see what happens between these two characters. Now, with a show about underage girls showing an interest towards sex, coupled with the fact that it is an anime, you are all probably wary of this show, and for very good reason. When's the last time you've seen an anime with similar elements that wasn't fanservice filled or just borderline hentai? I went into the show worried that the same thing would happen. So, how did it turn out? Well, it's highly complicated. If you haven't seen Maidens, there are probably some things you've seen go around the web that may have you concerned. Such as Kazusa's walking in on Izumi, this, and two of the girls' stories involving them and adult men. Nina's tale deals with a very controversial subject. The story at first seemed out of place and just put in for shock value. Nina has a romantic interest in her former acting teacher, and in telling her story we see the feeling might be mutual. This is highly controversial, but unlike other anime, this is actually a more complex subplot. You see, Nina is the victim of grooming. The acting coach singled her out, putting her up on a pedestal as a form of isolation. Nina had been catcalled at a young age. People had assumed her beauty would make her into a creature of vanity. Her mentor was using this as an advantage in making her feed into the idea of getting validation from him, but never truly getting it. All for sickening entertainment in his eyes. Each time she attempted to do something to break free from him, she was just playing right into his hands. and it eventually leads to this.
おいで。
That feeling you have right now, that disgust and unease, that thing that's making you say, I'm not watching the show if this is going to happen. Hold on to that. We'll come back to it. The other questionable story is for Hitoa, who's been trying to write erotic literature while sexting with a rando online. She meets up with this person who turns out to be a teacher at the school, who, to his little credit, was unaware he was talking to a high schooler. She uses his leverage to make him the club's advisor so they don't have to disband, but she discovers that once he has learned who she is, he indeed has no sexual desire to her at all. And being a young girl trying to write erotic fanfiction with no experience, this coldness he is expressing bothers her. This makes her make some terrible decisions. And let me be clear, the teacher truly does not have any attraction to her, but his way of dealing with her trying to come on to him is really stupid. He sets up questionable moments thinking she would be scared and that she will give up on everything. How well does that go? Well, this should tell you something. Let me point out that despite what you see here with both Nina and Hitoa's story, even though it goes to some very uncomfortable situations, not one of these stories comes out at the end looking bad. Yes, I know what you see in these images, but I'm telling you, to my complete shock and awe, Maidens somehow managed to steer the narrative to pleasing and pure ends despite all of this. It contains good comedy as well as emotional moments. It kept me engaged and had me intrigued. But one of the things that really sent this show to the spot on this list was the fact that it challenged me. It took me to some places I was not comfortable with, but had me thinking critically about many things from relationships, sexuality, romance, personal identity, and more. Maidens is available on High Dive. Check it out if you ever want a compelling tale on that savage season that is adolescence. The Promised Neverland. Quick side note observation, this has been a really good year for saxophones and rock and metal music, hasn't it? Promised Neverland is a story about kids in an orphanage looked after by a lady they simply call Mama. And these kids are just adorable and sweet and just too precious. So pure in their white clean clothes and tattooed numbers. Wait, what? Yeah, it's doubtful anyone can go into this show and not know, either from the trailers or the overall tone and look at the first few scenes, and not realize that something bad is going to happen to these characters in the future. Emma, Norman, and Ray are the oldest of the children living there, who shared the closest bond. One day, one of their fellow quote-unquote siblings, Connie, is being sent off after being adopted. However, seeing that she has left behind her favorite stuffed animal by mistake, Norman and Emma rush to try and return it to her. In doing so, they discover the dark and twisted secret of the orphanage. It's actually a farm where kids are shipped off as food. I don't think I've ever seen a single solitary second of animation convey as much horror and emotion as this one shot. Left traumatized by this reality, Emma and Norman make a promise to escape along with everyone else. The story follows these two as they form a plan of escape while trying to hide that they have found the truth from Mama, trying to keep their happy-go-lucky personas intact, all in a race against time to plan and execute an escape before the next sibling is shipped off. One of the things that really impressed me with this show was some of the visual style choices and overall feel of this show. It is full of very tense and unnerving scenes that keep you on edge, sometimes doing so abruptly. Typically in anime, when two characters are talking, not much visually happens. But in Promised Neverland, they took the time to get creative in several scenes with what they showed when exposition was being delivered. I really appreciated it for that. Another great thing is just seeing the three main children act off of each other. Norman and Ray battling with their wits, and Emma showing a strong resolve of not leaving anyone behind despite impossible odds. Even going so far as to say, when the possibility of a traitor being among them is brought up, that she would even take them along as well in the escape. Probably one of the strongest elements in the show is every sibling's camaraderie with each other, both in good times and in bad. I'm honestly a little shocked that this didn't make the very top of the list. I remember getting emotionally involved with all these characters. In looking back, the only things I could really point out as to why it didn't reach the top was some random mood inconsistencies. I mean, one of the things that always bothered me in shonen series was random funny moments. Like the thing that young kids and teens can't care about serious stories without random hijinks or LOL moments. And there are a few here and there. Though honestly, I've seen much worse coming from other shonen shows this year. Looking at you, Demon Slayer. And sometimes a few bombshells revealed come at the cost of being realistic. Such as a reveal of one character having their memory from when they were a fetus. Yeah, I get how scientifically that's impossible, but if you are willing to start watching a show where kids are kept on a farm as food in a world that contains devilish monsters, really have any right to complain that your verisimilitude is being compromised? Just saying. Though even myself at times have my limits, such as in there being so many instances of characters saying crucial information out loud, near candlelight, in places they shouldn't be, and just expect nobody else to ever notice they're there. An entertaining yet arguably detrimental element in it was the introduction of Sister Crone, off-the-rails insane assistant brought in to keep a closer eye on the kids. Like at times her presence was intimidating, but other times... Yeah. And without going into spoilers, the last episodes are one of those kinds of super big reveals that made my jaw drop and go insane with every little secret that was being revealed. And it had me both really impressed, but also at the same time going, how? But how? Believe it or not, at least to me anyway, the biggest bombshell came out of Phil, who is, by the way, the best of the best boys, and in this house we protect that little uwu. Yeah, little things like that I can see other people not buying if they were presented with it. But like my example earlier, suspension of disbelief is not a bad thing. The story was still engaging, the tension was layer upon layer of thick, and the show keeps you guessing to the very end. Promised Neverland is available on Crunchyroll, Funimation, Hulu, and High Dive. Check it out, and I'm sure it will grow on you. Wait, stop. Before we talk about number one, I've got to address something here. If anyone's ever watched the Crunchyroll Anime Awards with me, you know how I like to complain about that one show that's really popular, so it has season after season every year, and it always seems to win most of the awards because it's popular and all that? Well, when I make these lists, I always try to prevent putting a second seasons from a show I like on the next list, or if the show started on the tail end of the year and continued in the next year, not to add it to next year's list and all that. So there was a show I really liked from last year that had a second season this year. And I decided, okay, I'm not going to put it on the list. I'm even going to try to rate it, but I'm going to watch it because I enjoyed the first season. And to my chagrin, I could not keep it off this list. And by the end of watching it, it had to be number one. For me, at least. And this is going to irritate a lot of you because this show, beating out the rest, is going to be ridiculous. And you're going to hate me for this. Especially if your profile pic looks like this. But please, hear me out on this one. Season 2 of Teasing Master Takagi-san. I know. How is this possible? How did a show whose first season only made it to number 6 in last year's list make it to the number 1 spot? How did the show beat out Fruits Basket, Promised Neverland, Old Maidens, freaking Demon Slayer? What could possibly justify this decision? Well, like I said, I wanted to avoid putting the show on this list, but still wanted to watch it because season 1 was something I really enjoyed. Normally in reviewing shows for these lists, I try to think about what the vast majority of anime watching fans would enjoy. To judge things on interesting stories or emotional beats rather than just the percentage of flaws versus strengths. But as I was watching the season, I couldn't help but think, I'm not finding any flaws in this. Like, the show was delivering everything that I was expecting. You had Nishikata and Tatagi playing games to try and one-up each other, but Nishikata, as usual, failing every time. I could not help but find it absolutely adorable every time Nishikata became bashful around Tatagi, like when he had to share a textbook with her after forgetting his, or when Tatagi got extremely close and personal with him and trying to answer his question on what he changed about himself. The outcome of each scenario was something predictable, but always satisfying, and that mostly comes from this fact that you can tell Tatagi is doing all this not out of malice or cruelty, but something sweet and loving. Every episode I felt pure joy and satisfaction of watching these two kids just being kids. As I continued to watch, I started to notice something unusual in each and every game they played with each other, or each time Takagi teased Nishikata.
ところで西方は避けるのかな、それとも受け止めるのかな。私は西方には避けるより受け止めてほしいな。
どっちの話だよね。
どっちの話だよ。
The amount of flirting involved seemed to have come on even stronger. Takagi is getting more physical in her attacks, saying things like how something Nishikata did made her happy, or commenting on how they are alone together, or referring to even their interactions as if they were on a date. But what is most interesting is the times we see what appears to be Takagi's facade weaken a bit, or some visual indication of unease from Takagi. In episode 1, Takagi made a very bold statement.
そんなに私に勝ちたいならって繋いでくれたら西方の勝ちでいいよ。
Later, by the riverside, Nishikata accidentally bumps Takagi, and in an effort to save her from falling in the river, Nishikata grabs her hand. We see later that she seems quiet and asks him if that counted as holding hands, to which he says no. This moment must have stuck with Takagi, because she brings up the suggestion of holding hands at least 6 more times in this entire season. Episode 3 was where something hit me. Takagi lies to suggest that the classes will be changing next year, and her and Nishikata might end up in a different class. Nishikata imagined this with excitement because it would mean he would not get teased every day anymore. But then... the very thought of someone else being beside him in class, even if it was a different girl, was a sad thought. That is when it hit me. This season is building up to something, isn't it? The show is dropping hint after hint that something important will happen, and by the start of episode 7, the biggest clue ever was dropped. As Takagi and Nishikata are taking a class photo for a camping trip, this happens. Yes, you saw that right. That was a glimpse at adult Takagi looking back at an old photo. After episode 7, Takagi drops more and more hints about how often they are alone together. Then I started to realize what's going on. This is Inception. No, not the movie, not the dream within a dream. I mean the actual definition of Inception. To place an idea in someone's head. All these jabs, all these statements, and especially the one suggestion that she has made constantly throughout the season. How he can win if you just hold her hand. She is practically spelling out to him, I'm okay with everyone thinking we're a couple. I am in fact wanting that. And I want you to make the first move. And does Nishikata ever figure this out? Does he ever make a move? Remember how I said that in the last season, the last 2 episodes made everything worth it? That goes tenfold for this season. These were some of the most nerve-wracking episodes ever, and boy did the payoffs just warm me inside. I loved season 1 and was just expecting season 2 to be more of the same, but to my surprise, they gave us something more. A theme, a build-up, and a satisfying payoff. And because of all that, that is why I put the show at number 1 this year. And I highly anticipate the announcement of another season. Teasing Master Takagi-san finally dropped on American Netflix on December 6th, so don't dodge this show, and be sure to catch it.
どっちの話だよね。
And there you have it, folks, my top anime of 2019. What do you think? Agree? Disagree? Let me know in the comments down below. Don't forget to subscribe, like the video, ring that bell, all those other things you have to do to get the algorithm going for me and all that. And don't forget, if you haven't already, to join my Patreon to help support this show. Thanks for watching, folks, and as always, stay animated. Oh yeah, and don't forget the anime awards of tonight. See you there!